Welcome to It Starts With You, where we cut through the noise and get real about the behaviours that shape our lives, both personally and professionally. I'm Vic O'Farrell. Let's jump in because behaviours start with you. So, welcome to another episode of It Starts With You, me, Vicky O'Farrell. And today I am joined by the lovely Rebecca Thompson, who I have only recently just met via another mutual connection, posted something on LinkedIn. And I thought, oh, I need to speak to this lady. Rather than me introduce her, though, Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners and tell everybody what it is that you do?
Hi, Vicky. Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. It's always great to talk, isn't it? I've got a feeling this is going to be quite an important conversation for many women. So I am known as the 1 o'clock woman, and in my circles, that's what I talk about day in, day out. And what I mean by that is this kind of not tonight promise that you make, then you break that and you end up drinking, usually more than you wanted to. So I help women, I work with women to understand all that sort of pattern of behaviour, and so that they can actually make a decision about alcohol and what role it will play in their life, if any.
Thank you. And I think, I don't know why, but my feed on, not LinkedIn, but, oh, actually, maybe it is LinkedIn. That's how I connected with you. But Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, my feed seems to constantly be things about food, not so much diet, but making it easy for food and giving up drinking. And I'm like, okay, why is my feed constantly telling me this? Maybe there's something I need to do. I don't drink wine, although you're the 1 o'clock woman. For anyone that's watching or listening, I fell out with wine during menopause, and I'm now 6 years post menopause. If you've ever heard another episode, me talking about that. But I thought I need to speak to Becca. I wanted her to come on the podcast because when you tell people that you don't drink, as in alcohol, and I know I've been guilty of this when I've said to people, "Oh, what do you want to drink?" and they say, "Oh, I'll have a whatever," whether it's a Coke or a Guinness Zero or something like that, and you just look and you go, "Oh, you're driving," and they go, "No, I don't drink." I know that subtitles show on my face, and I kind of do that like, what? Do you mean you don't drink? Like, like people are, I don't know, alien or something. But what is it about the human behavior, especially Brits, definitely, but that makes us have that attitude towards, what do you mean you don't drink? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think there's an assumption. Well, I mean, the 1 o'clock culture, or I mean, I say wine, but it could be anything, is really prevalent, isn't it? We use alcohol to bond, we use to celebrate, we've had a great day or promotion or something, and to commiserate. And often alcohol is related to grief and processing all of that. What's interesting is that when you say I don't drink and those subtitles you talk about, often there's an assumption people think, oh, well, you must be quite boring then because yeah, because people are like, okay, you don't drink, so you're boring. But actually, what happens is when you do have a moment, take a step back from alcohol, and you watch people get progressively pissed as the night goes on. And some of the most boring people I have ever been trapped in a corner with at a party are those who are just over the limit a little bit and are telling you the same story over and over again. You just think, oh, please, I need to escape.
I've just covered my face if you're not watching and you're listening to this because I'm thinking, oh my God, that must have been me at some
Oh,
point.
we've all done it. We've all done it. Absolutely, we've all done it. But it's the assumption, isn't it, that if you don't drink, then you must be boring. And that's,
Why?
yeah, well, I think that's what society is sort of, we're socialized to think, isn't it? We must go to a party. If we're going to a wedding, we must drink, get up, dance, have a great time. And people often use alcohol to facilitate that process. So what we're really talking about is self-confidence and being able to walk in a room that can be quite intimidating of perhaps people you don't know very well, and to be relaxed enough and secure and safe enough in your own skin just to show up how you are. And I think part of that is wanting to be the best version of yourself, and people often think that that happens when they're a bit tipsy.
Yeah. So is it that people let their guard down a little bit? Let's take it because we go through the stage, don't we, of, just have a drink, which gives you that little boost, that little bit of confidence, to maybe a couple more that you just like you say, you see that person takes over the dance floor, and you just look and you go, you've had too many. To the stage where you are, like you say, standing at the bar talking to someone, thinking, please, you just need to go to bed now. You are absolutely sloshed. Yet why can't people who drink, and I'm not saying all people who drink, why is it that that one drink that gives you that confidence is never enough? Why does it then lead to another and another and another?
Because I think people actually misunderstand the way alcohol works. So you have that initial drink for Dutch courage and it helps you. And then the second and third and fourth drink is you trying to recapture that moment. So that first sip, and often when even when you're drinking on your own at home, that first sip is like, oh, that's lovely, isn't it? And then you have that sort of relaxing feeling and the mental chatter calms down a bit and you zone out in front of Netflix and watch gravy. And it's similar in a social setting. Is yeah, is in a social setting is that that first drink gives you the Dutch courage, and the mistake people make is they think, oh, well, I'll just have another one because it will actually build on my Dutch courage. To a certain extent, it might do, but there's usually a tipping point when people are breakdancing on the dance floor, and you, like you say, you think, oh, you've had too much, love. You really need to go home now. I mean, I'm notorious for that being that person on the dance floor, but that's my natural personality. People think I'm quite introverted, and that's true. But you put me in a party situation, and people say, "What is she on?" And my husband will say, "Well, she's not on anything. That's the trouble. I've got to drag her home in a minute."
Okay, so um, you don't drink anymore. Would you say that you party more now? You enjoy those parties more than you did when you used to drink?
Oh, absolutely. And well, I'm a bit nosy really, and I love a good chat with people. You'll always find me in the kitchen, either in the on the dance floor or in the kitchen, and I'm the one, getting into those deep conversations. And some people are, oh God, here she comes. But that I love to. I'm very nosy, and I just love to find out about people, what makes people tick, and what they do, and all that sort of stuff. So parties for me now. I've got a 60th coming up in September, and it's a very dear friend of mine, and I just can't wait because there's loads of people there I haven't connected with. Most of them will be absolutely trolleyed by about 9 o'clock. And up to that point, I'll probably have some lovely conversations, and then it'll be like free therapy from about 9 till 1 o'clock because everybody, once they've had a few too many, often quite get maudling and all of that. But yeah, so I do love a party. I've always loved a party. In my younger days, absolutely drugs, alcohol, rock and roll. But what I found is that I don't actually need those things to facilitate who I am naturally. I thought I did, but I don't.
So just coming back to that, when you say being in the kitchen and free therapy, I was how many times have you had conversations at a party? Now you're clearly sober and you can remember everything that was said. But do you ever get the day after and people message you and say, "Oh, what did I say to you last night?"
Yeah, I know I do get that on
I
occasion.
mean,
Yeah,
you
people
obviously
say,
you can't give any examples and go against any confidentialities, but you must have had some people really say some things that you think, you really shouldn't be telling me this."
yeah, and sometimes I've even said, you know what, you might want to go and look at that with somebody, not necessarily me, particularly if it's a close friend, but say, you might need to go and talk to somebody about that. And it's I don't know, I've got one of those faces that people come and talk to me. They'll talk to me on trains, they'll talk to me at the bus stop, and my husband says I will talk to a stone in the middle of the road. I'm just one of those chatty people. I'm just very nosy, like I said. And yeah, but people do get a little bit embarrassing. Did I say anything out of line last night? And I'll always say no, it was fine, even though the most extraordinary stories come out. But also, it goes in one ear and out the other to a certain extent, because when you work in this kind of line of work that I do, on a social setting, I'm a very different person. And so yeah, it does go in one ear and out the other. So people are like, oh, I'm like, no, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine.
Oh, but saying that, our behaviors when we are inebriated or under the influence of alcohol, um, some do we tell are we more likely to tell the truth when we are under the influence of alcohol than we are when we are sober?
Yeah, because you're less guarded. And that prefrontal cortex is, the messages are a little bit fuzzy. And that's why, well, reason why people drink is because they do want that kind of permission really to be a bit more outgoing or be a bit more party girl or whatever. And that's what alcohol does. It gives us that permission, and it does, it kind of interferes with that prefrontal cortex. So you're not thinking the same as you would be if you were sober. And in that sense, then, yes, people do lower their guard and they end up saying things sometimes that they regret later. This is why there's lots of arguments within couples, because they both get a bit sloshed and then say exactly what's been going on in their head. And you think, oh, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I'm really sorry. Yeah, so it does lower your guard. And that's useful sometimes in a social situation, but it also can work against you for sure.
I think that would be a really good I'm going off on a complete tangent here, but when you think I need to get the truth out of someone, like if like someone's been arrested and they're sitting in police custody, you're like, actually just getting a bit pissed, and then they'll just tell the truth when you go in and go, right, so exactly what did happen last night and blah 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 blah. Yeah.
But the problem with that is that because we often live our lives quite controlled, are very guarded about what we say, and we wear different masks, and I know you've spoken about that on previous podcasts. When those slip, often we end up saying things that we didn't really mean to, and we end up getting ourselves in hot water with people because we end up saying the truth, which doesn't necessarily always need to be said. And yeah, friendships and relationships have definitely, ended because of that.
Mm-hmm. But if we come back to that whole point of other people's behaviors, when we say we don't drink and you say people just go, oh, you're boring then. It's how do you get round that, other than obviously getting on the dance floor or being in the kitchen and being that sociable person? How do we get rid of that stigma of not drinking alcohol does not equal boring?
Let's hit pause for a second so I can tell you how I work with leaders and teams to turn behaviour into results. If your team's stuck in the same old patterns, it's not just a skill gap, it's a behaviours gap. My multitude of workshops break those patterns and build stronger, more productive teams. It starts with you, and together we'll make it happen.
There's been an awful lot done, isn't there, from alcohol free. It's been a whole movement. I'd have said probably the last 5 years, maybe. And there's lots more drinks on the market, isn't there? And quite often, if you've got zero beer or something like that, people don't actually care what you're doing. People don't really care whether you're drinking or not. And we in our own heads can make more of an issue about it. But it's really important to have something to say before you go into that social situation. So if you're deciding for that night you're not going to drink, I mean, you can say as simple as, oh, I'm not drinking, I'm driving, just as a cover if you feel that that's the right thing for you to say. But what it does is it actually holds a mirror up to other people's behaviour, and that's why it's triggering for other people. Because when you say you don't drink, often they hear judgment in that. They hear, oh, right, okay, she's got stuff sorted out, she feels better in her life, and then people sort of think about their own lives, and it's uncomfortable, and people don't like to do that. And just simply by saying I'm not drinking, you're putting a boundary there, saying I'm different from you. But the reality is that really it would be lovely to get to a place where you just don't actually give a fuck about what other people think about you. If you go and be sober, you just do you, right? They want to get smashed and act the fool on the dance floor. That's them doing them. And it's having that confidence. It comes back to that confidence of walking in the room, knowing who you are, and saying, this is me. And if you don't like that, that's not a problem. Not everybody is going to like you. You're, as I say, you're not everyone's cup of tea. And that is absolutely fine. And it's being okay with that that actually then allows you just to be yourself.
Yeah. So thinking on, like what's going on let's take me for an example. What's going on in my brain when if you said to me, if the doctor said you can never drink alcohol again, Vicky, one more drink of alcohol and you'll be dead, then that's the doctor telling me. But if you said to me, no, you can't drink, and I was just told, you've got to give up drinking, I'd be like, so I could never have a Negroni again. And I just love a Negroni. For those of you that don't know that cocktail, please do look it up. If you're a gin drinker, it is bloody delicious. But to think I could never have a Negroni, I sit here right now going, well, that's really sad because I really love the flavour. Is it the flavour, the taste, or the alcohol and what the drink does to me? I mean, I know you don't know what's going on in my brain, which is quite good because my brain's mental. But what is it? What is it? What's going on for me there when I'm thinking I could never have another Negroni?
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on for you. One of the first things I think is really unhelpful for people is we have this kind of binary approach at the moment in the world. It's either keep drinking more than you want and just kind of get on with it and feeling crap every day, or you must go sober forever. And that kind of binary approach keeps a lot of people stuck, because the idea of never having your favourite drink again, if someone said to me, right, there's a Ben and Jerry's ice cream that I really love, you cannot ever have that again, I'd be mortified. What? This is what? Why? This is not worth living. Life is not worth living. So that approach doesn't really help. So when women come and work with me, they take a 90-day step back from alcohol. And I don't say to people, right, you have to go sober forever, because that's not helpful. But what is helpful is they experience life without alcohol in it. And quite often they will simply choose to not drink ever again, because they just feel so damn good, that they just think, this is not what I thought alcohol was doing for me. It's actually not doing for me at all, and I can get that job done elsewhere. The other thing about the taste, now that's a really interesting one. That comes up a lot when I work with women. It's a story that we tell ourselves, oh, I like the taste of this. And you might like the taste, and that's fine. But that doesn't necessarily mean, for example, that I eat that particular ice cream every day. That then becomes the issue. If you want to have that now and again, then that is entirely up to you. We're all grown-ups here. We've all got our big girl pants on. And for some women, they just think, okay, I actually just want to have a nice glass of wine when I'm out with my friends, but I don't want to drink at home, because the job that alcohol is doing out with your friends is very different. And liking the taste is something that we do tell ourselves. But what actually, if we're really honest, and this leaning into this is quite uncomfortable, it's actually the buzz that we like. And that is difficult to talk about, because then we think, oh, well, hang on a minute. That's the same as why people use Coke. That's the same as why people use heroin, because they like the buzz. Well, that's not me. That's not the label I want to wear. And that's the bit that women struggle with, is actually admitting, yeah, I actually quite like the buzz it gives me.
Yeah, that it's the dopamine rush, isn't it? Because I do the thought of a Negroni. I mean, not now. We're recording this at 10 a.m. in the morning. But I know. So I was driving. This is going to go out later, but when the day, as we've recorded this, my husband was going out on Saturday night with his mates to a 50th birthday, and I said I would drive them there because I'm at home on my own. And I remember they both had a drink, and it was a lovely tumbler, really nice tumbler glass with an oversized ice cube, and I could hear them both like just chink that ice in the glass. And to me, in my head, that was my Negroni ice cube, and it was just like, oh my God, I could really fancy one. And I was like, but I said I'd drive them, and they're what happens in the brain? What's the behavior that suddenly makes us go, can't have one?
Yeah, it's disappointment, isn't it? Because you've associated that sound. There's all sorts of rituals around drinking. There's the sound of the cork. Even, right from buying it in the shop, there's the anticipation. And that also builds up dopamine, is the anticipation of the taste, the anticipation of the event. So we think, oh, stick that bottle in the fridge and it'll be nice and cold later. Then the sun comes out and we're thinking about it again. One of the things that women say to me a lot is how much energy they put into thinking about drinking. And when they take a step back from that, there's this lovely headspace that opens up. Because if you've decided to drink, that's fine. But if you're negotiating all day, should I, shouldn't I? Or, oh, I've got to drive somebody so I can't. It's that constant dopamine drip fed effect as the day goes through. And once you've made that decision, right, yeah, I'm going to have a drink later, the anticipation of that, right, I'll finish this email, I'll put that piece of washing on, I'll walk the dog, I'll make dinner. And then finally there's this moment, and you've built it up all day, where you take that first sip and it's like, oh, thank God. And part of that relief is the ending of the negotiation, right? That shouldn't I has ended. So that becomes the relief that you finally made a decision. Yes, I'm going to have a drink. And also that dopamine hit, not just the ethanol, but the actual dopamine hit. We all like rewards, don't we? So there it is. Oh, well done me. I've had a good day at work or whatever, and I'm going to have that drink. So we build up that dopamine. We drip feed it into ourselves through anticipation throughout the whole day.
Oh, when you break it down like that, I so know. Oh God, I am absolutely seeing myself, because if I've got a day where maybe I'm in London, maybe I'm going to go for dinner after I've delivered a workshop, I've got the car at the station. When I've got a day when I know I'm not drinking, I don't even think about it. But if I've got a day at home where I'm at home all day today, I won't be because I've got to go out tonight and I'm driving. But I'll be thinking, there would be a time when I'm thinking, oh, my last meeting's at, 3:30, I'll be finished at 4:30, or 5 o'clock, I can have a gin. I'm actually doing it. But is it I might be subconsciously doing it. And actually, when I take it back, I'm thinking of that dreaded COVID, that year 2020 in lockdown, and Boris Flippin Johnson used to do a 5 o'clock announcement, didn't he? When we actually locked down in that March, he would then do a 5 o'clock announcement every day. And that, I can't even remember what his name was, but he had the worst charts in the world with too much data in it that you just used to think, what is that you're trying to show me? Long stories is, if you don't stay in, it's going to be a catastrophe. And that 5 o'clock, that's where it's coming from. I'm having therapy here, recording this podcast. Everybody, you need to listen to the Wine O'Clock podcast. But I am thinking that was my break, because I never worked. I worked from home, but most of my delivery was out face to face. But in lockdown, obviously, everything was delivered on Zoom, and so suddenly I would come out of that office, and there would be the 5 o'clock announcement, and that would be my cut off, or my, what would you call it? My changeover from work to home. Normally I'd have a train journey home, but actually I'm thinking, no, it's the pouring the gin and, oh, I mean, I've always drunk, but that could be where it's come from.
Yeah, definitely. And I always say that the alcohol, for many capable women who have very high powered jobs, lots of responsibility. I mean, I've worked with GPs, social workers, all sorts of people are right on the front line. Alcohol becomes the bridge. It becomes how to go from your daytime you to evening you. And this becomes more difficult when you've got families to run. You're on the school run and you pick up children and they're incredibly ungrateful, and you haven't seen them all day and you've missed them. And you say, oh, how are you, darling? And they just, everything from their school day just gets shot at you. And you think, oh God, okay, I was hoping this is going to be a nice, hello, mummy, how are you? And they just can be absolute bastards, to be quite honest. And you pick them up and you just think, oh, and I remember mine in the back, I just feed them snacks just, because they were hungry, because they hadn't eaten until, since lunchtime. But there was definitely, I mean, I was teaching, so I had sort of my daytime job very capable, running workshops, all sorts of things, mentoring students, and then having to come home and then be mum. And for me, certainly at that time, alcohol became the bridge. And often I had to do, once I'd done all my household stuff and the kids were in bed, then I'd have to get my work out again and be marking until sort of 10, 11 o'clock at night. And that was exhausting in itself. And that is the life of a teacher. But many women have that, and there's this kind of disconnect between who they are in the day and who they are in the evening. And alcohol often facilitates that transition period. It becomes the anchor, it becomes the permission slip to stop when everything else is done. And yeah, they find that that's the way that they sort of slide into the evening.
That's really key. When you actually describe it as the bridge, I wonder actually how many of you are listening thinking that was definitely my bridge in lockdown. And for me, I haven't been able to get out of that. I've always drunk before lockdown. I am. I'm not an alcoholic, people, by the way, when you're listening to this, but I do like a drink. But I never used to drink every night. But actually, since lockdown, I have because it's become a habit of bridging the change from, because like I say, if I'm delivering a workshop and I'm in London, I'm not delivering my workshop thinking, oh, I can't wait to have a drink. I don't get on the train and crack open a tin of gin on the way home. I used to on a Friday when I did it every day. But I did see that last week. The amount of people on the train with a drink on the way home, and it was like a Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's really do you think it's getting hold of us as a nation, not just a nation, because this podcast is listened to around the world, but I've never commuted, in Poland. But do you think it's getting to us that it's become a habit that at 5 o'clock we want to drink?
Yeah, and that clock watching behaviour is really prevalent, isn't it? And actually, what happens is because we often tell ourselves, "Oh, it's a bank holiday, I can start at 2 o'clock or it's a Saturday, I can start at 2 o'clock." You're laughing, yeah, because I'm sure. I mean, I say that to myself all the time, and I'm sure you've said it to yourself. Oh, yeah, it's okay. It's bank holiday Monday tomorrow, hooray! And we just crack it open. But is that it? What you're talking about is behaviours, isn't it? And that's your bag, isn't it? You talk about behaviours all the time, and I talk about patterns and behaviours, and it's definitely something with the women that I work with. I find that they start this in perhaps their late 40s. I mean, if you look at your drinking history or anyone's drinking history, in your 20s, maybe you're at uni and there's lots of partying and you drink loads and recover quite nicely. And then, in your 40s, it becomes something, as I say, like the bridge or a permission to stop from very busy lives, mothering, parenting, careers and all of that. And then it becomes a habit. And before you know it, you are in your 60s and you're settling down with your gin or whatever it is, in your pajamas at 6 o'clock, looking across at your partner going, is this it? Is this my life now? And it's because it's anything we practice over and over again, going to the gym, waking up early, journaling, all those really positive things. Any behaviour that's practiced over time then becomes entrenched and as a habit, and it sneaks up on us. And we see it. I think we have a culture at the moment as alcohol as being like a kind of self-care. Well done, you've had a shit day, you got through the day, you deserve this, which is absolutely, if you step back and look at it, it's extraordinary. Because if you don't smoke, you wouldn't say, oh, well done, here's 20 Benson Hedges or whatever the brand is these days. It just doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
But because it's so ingrained in society throughout the world, we use alcohol to facilitate celebration, connection, and all of those things. It just becomes normal. And women often don't realise that actually it's not a problem until it's a Tuesday night, like you say. And that promise, oh, I'm not going to drink till Friday. And then you have a rubbish day or whatever. And then you're cracking open the wine and you're thinking, hang on, it's Tuesday. I used to get so annoyed with my husband when he would say, hang on, Beck, it's Tuesday. What, you said you weren't drinking till 5? I know, I've just had a terrible day. Shut up. But it is very pervasive, and it is part of our culture. Children are raised around alcohol, and binge drinking is on the up, particularly with young women. And it's often it's the way we communicate, it's the way we bond often, because quite often we're not taught how to do that properly.
No, we're not, are we? And if we take the basics of behaviours of introverts and extroverts, both will need some alcohol to change who they are. But let's face it, alcohol is a drug, and it's a legal drug. You wouldn't get, I'm just thinking, getting a little bag of powder out, cracking up a little line. Well done, you've had a good day. That's Tuesday done. It just, people would think you were absurd, but actually, cracking open, that's been a good day. It's not, especially in the summer. That's the worst, isn't it? In the summertime. Yeah. Oh, Rebecca, we could talk for longer than we're talking for now. But I think what I'd like to do is I'm going to bring this one to a close today. Viewers and listeners, I know you're probably going, no, I need to talk more, I need to talk more. What you need to do is you need to go and find the Wine O'Clock Woman and Rebecca Thompson. That's Thompson without a P. It's not Thompson. All the details are going to be in the show notes anyway. I'll get all of those off of Rebecca. But go and listen to Rebecca's. I sat on the train last week listening to it. And I sat there and the woman opposite me and I'm just going, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. This woman just looked at me. She went, are you okay? And I went, oh, it's podcast. This is me. So yeah, go and find Rebecca's podcast. But if anything has hit you on this one, please do reach out to me or Rebecca. But if I could perhaps ask you, Rebecca, just to leave our listeners and viewers with one thought. If they're thinking now, they're listening to this thinking, yeah, but I'll have a drink tonight. Or maybe tonight's the night I don't. What's that one thing you would like to say to them?
Well, the one thing would be is to actually just start noticing your behaviour around alcohol, because that's the first step to anything. You can't change anything unless you start noticing what's going on. So it might be the thought that pops up. I call her the fuck it fairy quite often. She, I'm not going to drink, and then all of a sudden something happens and you just think, oh fuck it, I'm just going to have a drink. Just notice that, and without judgment, just be curious about your own drinking behaviour and what thoughts might be going on, because often it's not always connected to having a rubbish day. Something that I talk about a lot is success, and very many capable women have lots of success in their life, and sometimes it might be that's really uncomfortable. Oh goodness me, somebody praised me for something I did, and actually it's that feeling that's uncomfortable. And just start to notice when it is you're drinking and thinking about, is it because I want to change the way I'm feeling? What was going on before I wanted to drink? And to try and start noticing those thoughts and feelings earlier on in the day, because by the time that 5 o'clock comes, the decision has already been made earlier in the day. And the idea is to try and catch that decision when you can, when it first starts popping into your head.
Thank you. Words of wisdom from Rebecca Thompson.
You're very welcome.
We'll catch you on the next episode, ladies and gents. Please do check out everything in the show notes if you need to get in contact. It's a goodbye from me and a goodbye from her.
Thank you. That's been brilliant.
Well, that's today's dose of truth. Now go make it happen, because behaviour drives behaviour, and behaviour starts with you.